Story 1. Lena Marcela Medina de Jurad gave birth at the age of 5 years, 7 months, and 21 days. She was 4 when she became pregnant. There are monsters walking among us. That is a fact. Story 2. I took part in the war. There is an interesting fact. If you hear the sound of a bomb, it means you have already survived. Otherwise, you won't hear any noise except when it is in the air. You hear the whistle until it explodes. If you hear the explosion, you are alive. You have 5 to 6 seconds during the whistle to find a safe place to hide. Story 3. A grown-up is not going to come and fix my problems. I am the grown-up fixing problems for others. Those poor others. Story 4. As of now, there are an estimated 6 nuclear bombs from the United States that are missing and unaccounted for. Our bodies have no tangible way of knowing that we are breathing oxygen. As long as you are not choking and the gas you are breathing is not irritating, you would quickly fall asleep and die. Technicians who work with nitrogen tanks have died simply by walking into an area that has not been completely flushed of the gas. Story 5. I recently read that your immune system has likely eliminated multiple cancers in your body without you ever knowing about it. The concerning part? It only takes one instance for it to miss something for everything to go wrong. Story 6. In the 80 years since the invention of nuclear bombs, there have been at least 3 declassified instances in which the quick decision of one person has prevented nuclear war. We will not get lucky forever. Story 7. If all bacteria in cheese decided to move in the same direction, the cheese would travel quite a distance in a day. Story 8. When an elderly person falls and breaks their hip, sometimes it is not the fall that causes the injury. Rather, it is the hip injury that results in the fall. Story 9. Duck mating is extremely violent and can be likened to gang rape, with up to 30 male ducks pecking, beating, and taking turns mounting a single female while trying to pin her down into submission. The mating is so frenzied that it can escalate from gang rape to necrophilia, and the males often continue their attempts. Male ducks have evolved to have the largest penis of any bird, shaped like a corkscrew for more effective forced entry. In contrast, female ducks possess false passages and dead ends in their reproductive systems to make it more difficult for males to inseminate them by force. This has led to an evolutionary arms race, with males becoming more adept at aggression and females evolving better mechanisms to thwart such attempts. Story 10. Collagen is the only thing holding scar tissue together. Without it, healed scars would split open. The concerning part is that as we age, starting in our late 20s, our bodies begin to deplete collagen faster than we can naturally replace it. This is why skin becomes loose and wrinkles form. For some people, collagen supplements are necessary. Story 11. Alfred Henry Lewis once said that humanity is only 9 missed meals away from anarchy. Within 3 days, chaos can ensue even in the most developed countries, and the idea of eating the rich could become a reality. Story 12. It is no longer possible to fully rely on the news due to the amount of propaganda from certain news organizations. Story 13. If you start showing symptoms of rabies, you will most likely die from it. It is one of very few conditions that have a near 100% fatality rate once you are symptomatic, even in the face of modern medicine. Take a moment and imagine you have always had a soft spot for animals. You fetched a towel, murmured gentle words as you reached for it. That is when it bit you sharp, fast. You hissed through your teeth but waved it off. Just a scratch. You cleaned it, forgot it, but that little scrape had just signed your death certificate. Weeks pass. Then comes the headache, nagging but manageable. You take some ibuprofen and go about your day. Next, a fever and an aching tightness in your neck begin. Probably a cold. You shrug as you try to power through it. Then come the dreams. Haunting, vivid, real. The shadows in the corner are watching you, whispering. You lash out at the barest inconveniences, snapping at your loved ones. Existing becomes confusing, irritating, overwhelming. You hardly recognize yourself in the mirror anymore. A pale, shaken shell of yourself. Then suddenly water is utterly terrifying. Your throat clenches at the sight of what was once a refreshing glass. The sound of the faucet makes your skin crawl. You try to drink, baffled as your muscles seize, your body fighting you yet simultaneously crying out in thirst. It is then that you realize, all too late, the rabies virus continues its unrelenting rampage within you. Your next fear is the light, and new fears continue to stack up at every turn. You are hiding, a prisoner in your own mind as everything you once knew becomes unfamiliar. Nowhere is safe. Everything is hunting you. You are no longer yourself but a cornered beast, desperately clawing at anything that comes near. Agony descends, your muscles spasm, and your final flicker of life is spent, lost to madness. Adjusting my wording as I have learned there have been survivors. As of a study in 2011, 6 people have ever survived rabies, which is 0.01% of the approximately 59,000 annual reported rabies deaths according to the World Health Organization. Story 14. During a nuclear war, if your city were to be hit, you would be better off dying from the initial blast than suffering from radiation poisoning. Story 15. That half of people are less intelligent than the average person. Those individuals could bring about our downfall. Story 16. We have reliable evidence that the universe is billions of years old, yet some people believe it is only 4,000 years old, with no evidence to support this claim. Story 17. By the time you start showing signs of dementia, it is too late for treatment. Your brain has already deteriorated by that point. All you can do is slowly decline. Story 18. Not every person breaks down food the same way. In some cases, the release of pent-up gas while a person is sleeping can be deadly. In 2005, a case in France made headlines after a man accidentally killed his wife with a deadly gas known as musky brown shardling. The man had been celebrating the local football club's significant win against a rival club. He had been drinking beer and a homemade mead drink known locally as hydromel for 24 to 32 hours straight, with breaks to eat cheese and bread. The bread and cheese acted as a barrier for the liquids and gases building up in the man's body. It wasn't until he came home and fell asleep next to his wife that the pressure slowly began to build. The autopsy confirmed what the police had suspected. The wife had suffocated due to a lack of oxygen in the room, compounded by choking on vomit. At a certain point, the smell had caused her to violently vomit. The husband survived due to his slowed breathing. He had been so intoxicated that his oxygen levels dropped significantly. Gastroenterologists have advised that it is wise to have your primary doctor perform a colonoscopy before and after events like the Super Bowl, the World Cup, and other alcohol-infused gatherings. This will help determine if there is a dangerous level of gas building up. Story 19. Humans will probably never achieve interstellar travel on any real scale. There is no planet B. Time is passing. Story 20. Unless you are famous and have made a significant impact on society, you will probably be forgotten after you die. However, if you are like the rest of us, you will be remembered for only 2 generations, as if you never existed. Story 21. The Yellowstone supervolcano erupts every 600,000 to 800,000 years and causes global mass extinctions each time. It last erupted 640,000 years ago. Story 22. When you die, it is an experience that your brain has never encountered, so it reviews your entire life to find a way to survive. That is why your life flashes before your eyes. Story 23. The vast majority of posters on this subreddit are either bots or users seeking to increase their karma, just looking to sell their accounts or farm karma until they can post in larger not safe for work communities. Many of them use old accounts that they gain access to by stealing credentials from inactive users. That's why they have one post from 6 years ago and then only recently started posting around 19 days ago. They generally leave very generic responses to people's replies to bump their own posts and drive engagement. Sometimes they even lie in their replies to generate sympathy karma. Story 24. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention kept stashes of atropine syringes around the country in case of a nerve agent attack. Story 25. The people in orbit do not float because there is no gravity. They float because they are falling. Story 26. John Edward Jones became trapped upside down in a tight dead end in Nutty Putty Cave for 27 hours before he passed away. Story 27. 2 things. First, the end of the universe could be approaching based on the principle of false vacuum decay. where all subatomic particles drop to a lower energy state, leading to the obliteration of everything. We have no means to detect, stop, mitigate, or reverse this. Second, we may not even be real, we could be a construct of a Boltzmann brain. Enjoy the existential dread that comes from these thoughts. Story 28. The fact that time itself does not stop. It only marches steadily, coldly, and blindly, dragging us all toward the edge of oblivion, where death awaits us with open arms. Story 29. Some genetic illnesses may not become apparent until you are at least 40 years old. You can live your life happily, but then your body starts to deteriorate, and you may lose control of your movements and emotions. This progression continues until it leads to death. This is especially true when the mutation is sporadic rather than familial, as you may remain unaware of it until it manifests. Story 30. You can get tapeworms in your brain, causing irreversible disabilities such as blindness or paralysis. You acquire this by ingesting fecal matter. Consider this if you have a habit of engaging in certain unhygienic behaviors. Story 31. Everyone talks about fossil fuels running out, but nobody discusses the depletion of phosphorus. Phosphorus is essential for life, and millions of tons of it are used in artificial fertilizer. However, it only exists in an extractable form in a few locations, with Morocco having the largest phosphate rock deposits. Some experts estimate that we could run out in a few hundred years. If that happens, food security will be critically compromised. Story 32. The British police lost track of a convicted spree killer who was barely stopped from going on a second rampage. In the 1970s, Barry Williams, due to his violent tendencies and paranoid schizophrenia, which made him believe others were taunting and bullying him, used his gun to murder his neighbors. He went on the run and killed 2 other people while stealing gasoline, as well as shooting at numerous others. He was deemed insane and held until he could control his condition for nearly 2 decades. He was released under a false identity of Harry Street, but was allowed to emigrate abroad with the condition that he notify the authorities if he ever returned to the country, which he did not. In 2013, when he was reported to the police by his neighbors for violent behavior and extreme threats of violence against children under the age of 7, it was solely because of a single police officer that he was stopped before going on another rampage fueled by his paranoid schizophrenia, from which he had stopped taking medication long ago. When the threats were reported, the police assigned a junior officer to make inquiries about the man who made the threats and to check for any previous convictions. While conducting this background check, she discovered that none of Harry Street's publicly available information predated 1995, despite his age placing him in his late 60s. This indicated that his records only began when he was around his mid-30s, which served as an immediate red flag. She realized that around 1995 was when they switched from paper files to digital databases for police archives, and that whoever Harry Street was, the police likely misplaced his file for one reason or another. She retrieved his physical paper file and started reading it. She called the family he threatened in the middle of the night to tell them to evacuate their house while arranging for armed response officers to kick in the man's door and arrest him for breaching his release conditions. After reviewing his past case, they reasonably suspected he was planning to commit another atrocity. Homemade guns, pipe bombs, and bullets were what the police found in his house. He was psychiatrically assessed and deemed to be refusing treatment for his condition and was sectioned with a judge declaring that he could never be released. About a year later, he died in a psychiatric ward from a nervous breakdown on Christmas Eve. Williams had been expelled from at least one gun club and was in the process of being expelled from another due to disturbing behavior on the gun range. This included dressing targets or mannequins as people he knew, including other members, and modifying bullets to make them more powerful and lethal, as well as suspicion of stealing ammunition. Story 33. When a star explodes, it turns into a gamma burst that can destroy everything in its path. If one occurs near Earth, it could wipe out all life on the planet, and there is no warning. Story 34. The largest penguin colony in the world is located on an island with an active volcano, the most active volcano in its island chain. Story 35. Your body doesn't detect the need for oxygen. It detects the excess of carbon dioxide. If you're in a room full of carbon dioxide, you'll feel like you're constantly choking. In a room with another gas, such as carbon monoxide, you may not detect it. You'll think you're breathing just fine and feel okay, without shortness of breath. However, with each breath, the oxygen in your lungs is replaced with the other gas, and you may begin to feel a bit sleepy. You might close your eyes for a moment, fall asleep, and never wake up. Without even realizing it, you could be in danger. Story 36. If 99.99% of humanity dies off, there would still be more people alive than all living non-human hominids. So no, we will not have ape overlords. Story 37. If something were to happen to you, the people close to you would not know until it is too late. How often do you dismiss people not arriving as just them being late? How often do you think people are simply sleeping in? If I were to die in my sleep, it would probably take until the afternoon for someone to check on me. Story 38. The sun is so loud that if space were filled with air, its sound would be 125 decibels on Earth, 92 million miles away. Story 39. There are 40 million slaves in the world, more than at the height of the Roman Empire. Half of those slaves, 20 million, are sex slaves, and half of those, 10 million, are children. Evil flourishes on Earth if not continuously fought against by the forces of good. Story 40. If you take small pieces of brain tissue and provide them with nutrients and warmth, they will grow small structures capable of perceiving light. Story 41. The idea that our brains do not process reality as it is. We are all walking around with an incomplete picture of the world, filtered through our senses and perceptions, which is honestly quite terrifying when you think about it. Story 42. There are thousands of nuclear weapons aimed at your city and everyone else's at this very moment. Watching the news really makes you think. Story 43. There is nothing stopping an asteroid or other extraplanetary objects from smashing into the Earth at 1,000,000 miles an hour. We could all die in a matter of seconds, and there is nothing we can do about it. Story 44. In Fiji, a bird of the sail refers to the bodies of children tied to the mast of their catamaran after a war. The bodies were taken from the battlefield to be eaten at the victor's home. In Aotearoa, when a delicacy was to be eaten and the head removed, it would be kicked around like a soccer ball by the village children. Christian Siefkes, edible people. Story 45. Consider how uninformed the average person is and then recognize that half the population is less informed than that. Story 46. The human anus can stretch up to 7 inches before tearing, and a fully grown raccoon can squeeze into holes as small as 4 inches in diameter. Therefore, it is theoretically possible for a fully grown raccoon to crawl into the human anus. Story 47. Theoretical particles called strangelets could destabilize all ordinary matter and turn it into strange matter through a chain reaction. One could impact Earth and render everything into non-existence. Story 48. That corn is in almost every food and product sold in America one way or another. It blows my mind and scares me. Story 49. We are still doing nothing about climate change. In fact, we might even be going backwards now. Many people, including those in powerful positions, are aware of this and have decided that, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter or it's too late to act. As a result, they won't address the problem or take action for political expediency. This is an unprecedented threat to our species, especially since we have the ability to make a difference. An asteroid strike or a supervolcanic eruption is beyond our control, but simply transitioning to energy sources that do not produce greenhouse gases could turn this situation around. We are not doing it, and I don't see it happening either. Story 50. Modern life is essentially reliant on your neighbor's bicycle not catching fire at night while they charge it. Story 51. False vacuum theory suggests that everything could be annihilated instantly without warning, which is a chilling thought. Story 52. The mission is to achieve net zero emissions by a specific point this century. However, we have not yet reached the peak of emission rates. They will continue to rise and accelerate. It is an optimistic outlook to aim for net zero emissions, but we cannot deceive ourselves into thinking we can reverse this situation. Carbon capture, trees, and cyanobacteria will not resolve this issue. The rise in global temperature is inevitable. We can only reduce the rate of acceleration. Imagine being told we cannot stop the tsunami, The best we can do is make it rise a little less high. I am typing this on a train in May in the northern United Kingdom, and I do not even remember feeling this hot last July at the peak of summer. It is going to get worse, not just the heat, but also weather patterns, water acidification, and more. The portrayal of a dystopian future in Mad Max was optimistic. We have made significant mistakes. Here comes Wall-E. Story 53. What chemicals and elements are allowed to be present in our water under the Safe Drinking Water Act? Story 54. The gut burst scene in Alien was the writer's visual representation of the pain he felt from the miserable and incurable affliction of Crohn's disease. In the United States, Republicans continue to cut medical research on multiple fronts. Story 55. Organisms develop adaptive mechanisms due to environmental pressures, and developing, maintaining, and improving these mechanisms are energetically expensive. Tardigrades can survive extreme pressures, radiation, temperature, dehydration, and starvation. The fossil record does not indicate why they are so well suited to withstand these conditions simultaneously. Story 56. Unless you have a family history of heart attacks, we will not check your heart during a routine examination. Additionally, many individuals from countries without comprehensive medical records may have a family history of heart conditions without being aware of it. Story 57. 1 out of 5 women in the United States have been raped during their lifetime. 1 out of 3 of those women were aged 11 to 17 years old. Story 58. Some stars emit jets of radiation at nearly the speed of light. If one collides with Earth, it could destroy all life. At that speed, there is no warning. Story 59. Humans are the most destructive, selfish, and deceitful species on this planet. Few possess complete honesty and integrity. Story 60. You get cancer every 5 minutes. Your immune system is usually good at removing it, but it takes one wrong mutation and it can change everything. Story 61. Curious why climate change-related facts are not prioritized despite their immediate relevance. Story 62. Some scientists believe that climate change has already reached a point of no return. If every nation were to suddenly become environmentalists, it would not be enough to save us from scorching ourselves alive. Story 63. Many people complain about the negative actions of companies like Disney and Amazon, but few suspect or discuss the issues surrounding Nestlé. Nestlé has committed more heinous acts than many political leaders. I won't provide an exhaustive list of Nestlé's misdeeds, but here are a few. Sold baby formula to illiterate populations, making it difficult for families to feed their children. Sold horse meat. Acquired control over water sources in various countries. Used extreme child labor in chocolate production. There are likely more incidents, but these are the ones that come to mind. It's concerning that nobody seems to pay attention to Nestlé when discussing unethical companies. Story 64. Advanced artificial intelligences designed for network penetration, on-the-fly malware generation and editing, and intelligent command and control oversight are operating on the front lines of the largely unobserved cyber Cold War. Cyber superiority outweighs nuclear deterrence. You cannot launch if your computer systems are compromised. It also significantly levels the playing field in terms of military projection and technological advantages. Story 65. I will die by suicide. Maybe not today, tomorrow, or 3 years from now. But the idea that one half of my brain will give up one day to the other half is quite scary. Story 66. Rabies is exceptionally common, but people do not often encounter the animals that carry it, especially skunks and bats. Imagine this scenario. You go camping and at midday you decide to take a nap in a nice little hammock. While sleeping, a small brown bat in the infectious stages is fidgeting in broad daylight, uncomfortable and thirsty due to hydrophobia. You snort, startling him, and he goes into attack mode. However, you are asleep, and he is just a small brown bat weighing around 6 grams. You do not even feel him land on your bare knee as he starts to bite. His teeth are tiny, hardly enough to break the skin, but he does manage to give you a tiny scrape that goes unnoticed. Rabies does not travel in your blood. In fact, a blood test will not determine if you have it. Antibody tests may be performed but are ineffective if you have ever been vaccinated. You wake up, none the wiser. If you notice anything at the bite site, you assume you just lightly scraped it on something. The bomb has been lit and your nervous system is the wick. The rabies virus will multiply along your nervous system, doing virtually no damage and remaining completely undetectable. You literally have no symptoms. It may be 4 days or a year, and the camping trip is most likely long forgotten. Then one day your back starts to ache or maybe you get a slight headache. At this point, you are already in grave danger. There is no cure. The sole exception to this is the Milwaukee Protocol, which often results in the death of most patients anyway, while the survivors may be mentally disabled and the protocol is seldom applied. There is no treatment for rabies, and it has a 100% fatality rate. Absorb that no other virus on the planet has a 100% fatality rate. Once you are symptomatic, it is over. You are dead. So what does that look like? Your headache turns into a fever and a general feeling of illness. You become fidgety, uncomfortable, and scared as the virus, which has taken its time getting into your brain, finds a vast network of nerve endings and begins to rapidly reproduce, starting at the base of your brain, where the pons is located. This part of the brain controls communication between the rest of the brain and body, as well as sleep cycles. Next, you become anxious. You still think you have only a mild fever, but suddenly you find yourself becoming scared, even horrified, without understanding why. This is because the rabies virus is attacking your amygdala. As your cerebellum becomes inflamed with the virus, you start to lose muscle coordination and balance. You think it might be a good idea to see a doctor now, but even if a doctor is smart enough to run the necessary tests in the little time you have left, chances are they will only be able to tell your loved ones what you died of later. You feel twitchy, shaky, and scared. You experience the normal fear of not knowing what is happening, but with the virus affecting your amygdala, this fear is amplified 100-fold. Around this time, hydrophobia starts. You feel terribly thirsty and want water, but you cannot drink. Every time you try, your throat clamps shut and you vomit. This develops into a genuine fear of water. You are thirsty, yet looking at a glass of water makes you gag and retreat in fear. The contradiction is difficult for your strained brain to comprehend. By now, doctors may need to put you on intravenous therapy to keep you hydrated. But even that is futile. You were dead the moment you experienced that headache. You begin to hear things or experience conditions where you hear nothing at all as your thalamus deteriorates. You taste sounds and see smells. Everything feels like the most horrifying acid trip anyone has ever experienced. With your hippocampus under siege, you struggle to remember things, especially your family. You are alone, hallucinating, thirsty, confused, and utterly terrified. Everything frightens you at this point, including the strange people in lab coats around your bed, crying and urging you to drink something. It has only been about a week since that little headache, a detail you have completely forgotten. Time has lost its meaning for you. Ironically, you now understand how the bat felt when it bit you. Eventually, you slip into the dumb rabies phase. Your brain has started to shut down. Too much of it has turned to liquid virus. Your face droops, you drool, and you are almost entirely unaware of your surroundings. A sudden noise or light might startle you, but for the most part, you can do little more than stare at the ground. You have not truly slept in about 72 hours. Then you die. Always you die. And there is not one thing anyone can do to help you. Then there is the question of what to do with your corpse. While burying it is the right thing to do, the virus can survive in a corpse for years. You could eliminate every rabid animal on the planet today, and if 2 years from now, some preserved piece of old brain matter gets consumed by another animal, it starts all over again. Story 67. In some cases, if your brain recognizes that your eyes are present, it may perceive them as parasites and attempt to eliminate them. Story 68. We are at risk of solar flares causing damage to every electronic device we have. The closest call we've had from one of these life-altering solar storms was only a few days away from being directly in its path. Beyond the impact of not being able to use social media, consider the wider implications in a technology-reliant world, particularly in emergency services, transportation, and logistics. The consequences would be significant. Regarding the concept of a false vacuum, it is not a fact but a theory. We do not know if it is possible, And even if it is, we cannot be certain it would turn out as theorized due to the expansion of the universe. The individual who proposed this theory has a deeper understanding than I do, so I will not dismiss it, but it is important to note that it remains a theory and a concerning one at that. Story 69. We detect asteroids when they reflect light that we can see or when they cross background objects. Interstellar asteroids and comets, like Oumuamua, can hit Earth without us seeing them approach. They also travel at very high speeds. If the universe started with a big bang and expanded evenly, it is peculiar that 2/3 of the galaxies we can observe rotate clockwise. One would expect this to eventually average out to about 50% at a galactic scale. One of the theories is that we are inside a black hole. Black holes spin, which could explain why there is a dominant rotation. If that is true, then every black hole could harbor a new universe, and we have a parent universe that, under the current laws of physics, we would never be able to experience. Story 70. Neglecting dental care can have serious consequences. Poor oral health, including cavities and visible and non-visible tartar buildups, can lead to systemic issues like infections that spread to the bloodstream, cardiovascular problems, complications from diabetes, and bone loss. In severe cases, it can even result in coma or death. Despite this, dental services are often excluded or underfunded in universal healthcare systems worldwide. Story 71. There are many individuals in military organizations around the world who could launch nuclear missiles at any moment. These individuals are often very religious and believe that the afterlife would be a better place than life on Earth. If they were to accidentally or intentionally launch a missile and initiate a nuclear exchange, they might reach heaven much sooner. Yet, we allow these individuals to be in charge of the missiles. Have a good night's sleep, everyone. Story 72. Prions exist, and there is nothing we can do about them. After all, you cannot kill what does not live. Story 73. I learned how Christofascists nearly took over the world in the 1940s, and I see it happening again today. Story 74. Russia has already compromised the United States significantly. The Russians have infiltrated our power grids, copied credential keys, and can now turn off our power at any time. They have accessed our nuclear laboratories, Homeland Security, the Pentagon, and even our Treasury, and no one has known for months. They have planted spies inside our government. They have run fake social media accounts that reached over 100 million Americans to fuel division and chaos. They do not need to take control of our systems. They have already obtained what they came for: access, influence, and confusion. Meanwhile, we are still debating whether it even happened. It will take years to remove Russian control over the United States. Story 75. It takes 2 minutes to lose consciousness and 12 minutes to be brain dead. The last sense to shut down is hearing. You will know that you are dying, and there is nothing you can do about it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.